Hi everyone, I'm Mara Webster with SAG-AFTRA Foundation, and thank you so much for tuning in to watch another one of our Conversations at Home videos today. Before we start today's conversation, I want to continue reminding everyone watching these that the SAG-AFTRA Foundation is a nonprofit organization, and as such we have a COVID-19 Emergency Assistance Fund, which is working to support actors who are currently out of work due to film and television productions being closed everywhere at the moment. So please check out the details below and consider supporting if you're able to in any way. Today we're joined by the wonderful Jane Levy, currently starring in Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. And I wanted to jump right in by asking you about working with Austin Winberg, the showrunner, because I hadn't realized when I first watched it that this was based on his own personal experience until we had that moment in the finale with the beautiful remembrance of his father and the picture of them together. And I was interested in the way that, you know, it being such a personal story for him really helped you to understand the emotional journey that your character was going on and really understand a lot of the deeper layers.
Yeah, I find the show to be such a beautiful gesture. I was so moved by that card at the end of our finale, saying that this show is in honor of the life of Richard Winsberg. And, you know, for Austin, I think this is a fantasy in some way of what he could have said or what his father could have said to him in the last few months of his life. And I think it's such a beautiful way to grieve. And there was lots of conversations between Austin and Peter, especially, who was portraying his father, and talking about the details of this neurological disease and how it affected his father, because I think it affects people differently. And, you know, I think that our show has such a great combination because of Austin of heartbreak and humor, and in both of those worlds there's beauty. And we didn't necessarily talk that much about his, that's not true. We talked about his grieving process and you know, feelings of shame that would come up and fear and again, fantasy about like his greatest wish. And I think what's so great about writing something so personal is that it becomes universal when it's specific. And I think that whether we've lost a parent or anyone in our lives or not, I think that we all can really empathize with grief. And I think our show tackles that in a really honest, messy, beautiful way.
It does. And one of the ways that it does that so beautifully is obviously through the music, which is such an interesting and different way to approach this type of topic. And it's fascinating as well, because obviously we all have emotional connections that are pre-existing to songs or just hearing certain types of melodies and rhythms and deliveries. And so I was interested in, from the performance side, how that makes you think about the emotional delivery of your performance differently, particularly with the music scenes, because it's asking for a very different delivery and side of the craft from you.
Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time thinking about the musical element. And in my crafting of Zoe, I felt like there was a real connection between her getting this gift and finding out that her father was dying. I think that those things are connected, and it wasn't just by chance that she got this gift at the same time that she began grieving the coming loss of her father. And, you know, I thought a lot about music, and it really affects us differently than speaking or visual cues or imagery. And I thought about it a lot before I actually acted it on camera, and I would find that surprising things would happen. I would prepare the scene, and I crafted this whole idea that music is coming from inside of Zoe, since it's like her superpower. And so I always tried to make it somewhat physical. And, you know, because we're seeing all these musical numbers through my eyes, through Zoe's eyes, I wanted there to be real like specificity in that expression. But then there was times on set, most of the time, where I would come up with where the song was coming from, and what hearing this heart song from this person would mean to Zoe. And then when you're actually on set and the music is blasting and it's sung by my colleagues, it just affects you in this way that you can't really explain. And I think the viewers feel that way as well. It's a really cool tool. It's a cool tool to, as an actor who's used to speaking, to learn how to express through dance and song, and also express through other people's dance and song, which is sort of what my job was.
Yeah, and because you were mentioning the physicality and the dance side, I was really interested in hearing a little bit more about the collaborative relationship that you have with Mandy Moore, who's the show's choreographer and not the pop singer, but an incredibly accomplished choreographer who's done everything from La La Land to now this show, and just kind of how they really helped you to find your footing, and particularly before the show, the work that you did with Mandy and her team, in which they really helped you to build up this skill set that was a new venture for you.
Yeah. Mandy is such an amazing collaborator. She is one of the hardest working people I have ever met. And so just being around her, you are inspired to work as hard as she is. And she's a storyteller. I think, the reason she is a choreographer for the shows that she is and the movies that she is because she's interested in movement with reason, and like an actor, we're telling a story. She just does the same thing with expression of dance. And the reason she's such an amazing collaborator is she's so open and willing and curious. She's curious about your specific instrument. And we didn't have that much prep time to do dance lessons, but we had a couple weeks before we started shooting the season, about 2 weeks. And the second episode, which we shot after the pilot, like 4 months later, starts with a big song and dance number led by me. And so we spent a lot of time with her and her team, like just moving around together and moving across the floor, and them noticing which ways my body tends to move and I feel comfortable moving. And it was so scary and so fun to be able to dance on camera and to weave acting into that and singing at the same time, especially because it was new for me.
Yeah. Did you find that the same way that they were weaving in your abilities in terms of the dance and the choreography, that on the music side and the way that they put these songs together, because it's, it's not a direct rendition, there's different stylistic approaches to all of them, that they really kind of looked at your voice and your abilities there and molded it to you? Yeah,
I think so. I was just talking to Austin the other day, and he was like, television, you can make hundreds of episodes, and so it's not like a movie, obviously, or even these shorter form television shows that are on now where there's like a beginning and an end. It's like you become such a collaborative unit. And Austin was like, I don't know anymore where you begin and Zoe ends, and I've started to unconsciously even write for you. And of course that's going to happen. So I think that when he hears songs, he's like, oh, this would be a good song for that character, and especially the actor who plays that character. And the same for Mandy.
Yeah. And I wanted to also ask you a little bit about working with Eric Vitra, who was your vocal coach on the show. And again, kind of similar to the choreography, coming into this space for the first time in this way, what were some of the useful tools and techniques that he really gave you in the time that you spent training with him?
I just want to say I love Eric so much. He's such a brilliant teacher, obviously. I mean, if you look at the list of his students, it's all of the best. For me, it was like I didn't realize how technical singing was, and that your throat really and your diaphragm, it's all very much an instrument, and you can train it and you can become a better singer. And so for me, it was all about breathing and relaxation. I think that the more relaxed you are, the better the sound. And I am someone who is not relaxed. So it was really hard for me, especially when I was trying something new. You have to be humble because I'm someone that is mad at myself if I'm not good at something the minute I try it because I'm crazy. And so that would make me tense. And eventually I just had to realize that I'm not Alex Newell. I'm not Skylar Astin. I'm not Shawn Mendes. So I was like, okay, I'm never going to sound like these people. As much as I can relax and like try to tell the story with my voice, that's the best that I can be. And, you know.
What was the point in making the show where you suddenly felt that shift and that change, where you felt like you were letting go of the details and really just focusing on the emotional side of it instead?
I think episode 8, because the task at hand was so large. I sang 6 numbers and danced 5 of them, and I had to prep that while shooting the rest of the series, which I don't have any time off. I actually had a nightmare last night about my schedule. It's so funny. My shooting schedule. I was like, no! So I had to I had no choice but to let go. And then ultimately you realize that you are held by all the people around you. You know, you're not the center of the universe, even though the show is called Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. There's the editors, there's your cast members, there's the set design, there's the choreography, there's Eric Vitro, there's the show. Like, all of us hold the show together. And so as long as you do the best that you can, I mean, the work will probably be better if you're not thinking you have to carry everything, you know, on your own back.
Yeah. That totally makes sense. And because you're mentioning episode 8, which was just an astounding accomplishment and feat on your part. And I know that you've talked very openly about feeling kind of nervous about the task at hand and finding it understandably kind of daunting going into. And so how did you set about navigating that apprehension that you had and making sure that you were gaining confidence in all those areas that you needed to for your performance to overcome it?
You just have to put one foot in front of the other and take it one step of it at a time. So when I was in prep for the episode, it just seemed like this huge glaring impossibility. But then when you just start working on it, you learn the steps, you break down the script, you practice the songs. That's all you really can do. And at that point, I felt I had really gotten to know this character. And it was eventually such a fulfilling and fun task for me, because I play this character who's compartmentalizing and hiding all the time because she has this gigantic, terrifying grief coming at her, and she's somebody who is very type A, organized, likes to get the job done, so she's just streamlined, trying to like hold everything together. Not to mention she has this musical power that makes her like a freak, and nobody knows that she can hear all their thoughts. And so to be able to, after weeks and weeks of playing this character, to explore her real desires, because that's what heart songs are, was really fun, because I got to be sexual and very, very raw in my fear, and vulnerable and totally insanely neurotic. Like, just to be able to strip her down was so fun. And then I even learned more about her.
Yeah. And what was the value for you at that point? Because, you know, the majority of the time in the rest of the episodes, you're actually just watching everyone else deliver these performances. So at that point, you've gotten to see every cast member who performs approach it and go through this journey multiple times. And what were some of the things that you learned that you pulled into episode 8 and your own approach just from watching them on set?
That's really an interesting question. I feel like I have such a lucky job because I get to witness all of my incredible castmates just spew their talents every day, and I just got to sit there and be like, wow, so moving. But also I was like jealous. I was like, I would go up to the choreographer studio, and they have like twinkle lights, and they had all these like huge posters of dancers across time on their wall, and I was like, oh my god, this is what my castmates get to do. Like, they get to go to this beautiful dance studio and learn stuff. So I think I was just so jealous at that point of like what they were doing, that I was like, yes, now it's my turn. And like, I keep making this joke that I'm like a racehorse that somebody like locked up, and then finally they were like, Jane, you can go for a run today. And I used to be an athlete, so I have like a lot of energy, and now I'm sweating.
Gotta let it out sometimes.
Yeah. But I wonder if there is any, I mean, I learned a bunch from them all the time. I would ask a lot of my castmates about singing, because that is a lot harder for me than dancing. And, you know, I got to see television moves really quickly, and a lot of times my castmates didn't get many takes, and a lot of times these were oneers, and so you would just do it a couple times. And I think that the more you can listen to the music, which is like, this is like, what if there was a God and God gave Zoe this gift for a reason? I think that like the whole message would be try to listen to the music in life, you know, and like go with the flow a little bit more. And so I think the same as when you perform these songs, the more you can let the music guide you, the better and more clear the expression is.
Yeah, and it's mostly all pre-recorded music, but you did do kind of 2 or 3 songs where they were either fully or partly recorded live within the moment, just because that worked with the musical arrangement. So how is that different for you when you're on set recording those moments and performing those scenes with the whole crew standing around as well?
I ultimately became so comfortable with this crew. They're amazing. We spent 14 to 18 hours a day together for 6 months. So by the time we got to episode 8, it was like they'd seen every color from me that I didn't care anymore. You know, it's like you stop. I mean, I think the whole goal as an actor is to be as unconscious as possible and to like be as private as possible in a public setting. And it's easy to do that when, I mean, I work very hard to be able to do that. And then also like when you get to know these people so well. So when I was singing live, I honestly didn't care. It was like, sounds bad, I'm sorry. And it was really interesting for me because it was so new. Like I've said this story before, but singing How Do I Live, I was really upset and I couldn't breathe. And when you can't breathe, you can't really sing. And then also when you're that upset, it's very hard to lip sync. So it was hard to sing live and it was hard to lip sync, but it was cool to have this new challenge and to just, it's a very interesting process to sort of like, in this case, it wasn't choreography, it was a song, but to fit your like experience that you're having while you're acting into like pre-recorded song or like predestined choreography, you know, because of course you have to hit marks as an actor, but like you don't usually have to hit things so specifically. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like, and you can try different things in different takes.
Yeah, so if you're having like an authentic experience and then trying to like fit that into the pre-existing mold, it's a challenge, but that's what we're working on. And in a way, it was really cool to like stretch that muscle.
Yeah. And also, you know, because what you were mentioning there with the challenge of acting and capturing so many emotions and literally the difficulty of breathing and crying while still performing live or lip syncing, how did kind of shooting that particular song in that particular moment, then going through that experience really help when you came to shooting the finale and you were doing American Pie, which was asking the same thing of you, but even more expressive?
Yeah, well, I actually sang, everyone pre-recorded American Pie except for me. And I asked for that sort of for this reason, because I wanted to be able to take as much time as possible, especially because I'm the last of this moving train. Like if I do anything wrong, it all is ruined. And as the person at minute 6, I really didn't want to be responsible for screwing up like the camera operator, the DP, Mandy, all that cast's work. So being able to have freedom at the end was really important to me. And then ultimately, I think led to a more like connected, present, heartbreaking moment because it wasn't pre-recorded. But that being said, I still had to hit all my marks so that all my castmates could be seen and have their, you know, beautiful moments. But at that point, I was pretty comfortable with this crew. And I'm really proud of that final number because of the collaboration. Like that's what filmmaking is all about, when everybody is on their A game and we do it together and there's a beautiful result. It's
beautiful to watch. And was there a difference because of that? Because it is really intricate 6-minute scene where the camera's just flowing and following each of you. Was there a difference in the way that you all had to come together and prepare for that, even just in understanding, like, this is where the camera's going to be at this point, this is where we need to be by the time it gets to this moment?
Yeah, that, I mean, it's like, I don't even have words, because I can't believe what Mandy Moore is able to pull off, because she orchestrated that entire thing. You know, she makes pre-viz, I don't even know what that stands, pre-visuals. She records on her phone before anyone comes, before the DP, before the director, before the camera operator, before Austin. She really maps these out for the camera. And then she has to teach all of us actors and background dancers. And I just don't understand how she does this. I just don't understand how she's so I'm like, I would never be so confident in my life to think that I could pull something off. Blah. Anyways, we had to take a day off of production to all learn this. So I think she choreographed it with a skeleton crew, which is like dancers with like Zoe name tags on. And then, so that she could like map the whole thing out. And then she would one at a time teach all of us. Because our shooting schedules all overlapped, we had to take a day off of production. And we spent like 8 hours going through it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Coming back to episode 8 a little bit, because you were mentioning, you know, all the different tones that you hit. And one of the things that was so fun to watch was the different styles of comedy. You know, it's everything from real life dramatic comedy to pure like physical and slapstick moments, which we hadn't necessarily seen in the show up until that point. So how did you kind of, when you were sitting there with the scripts, figure out what the right stylistic approach was going to be for each of those beats throughout the episode?
So it starts with a script, and then Austin and Mandy have a conversation of the musical numbers, and he generally says his ideas, and then Mandy and her team have their ideas, and then Mandy and their team come to me and they listen to my ideas. And so, you know, there is a quality in me that is very clown-like. Like it's like my sensibility, and Jillian, our associate choreographer, I think really recognizes that in me, and there's like a kindred Lucille Ball clowning fetish or something. And so we really leaned into that with Mommy Kissing Santa Claus. And I think that's just a collaborative taste, I guess. Like, you know, I think that they see that in me, and then we figure it out together. And that was so much fun. And it was so much fun for me to be able to stretch myself in that way, or like the you know, pressure of me on the table, da, 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 da. Like that is so funny. And I think that was Jillian who came up with that part. And yeah, it was just like, it was a moment for me as an actor where it's very rare to get a job as an actor, and then it's very rare to get a job that really speaks to your sensibility and your strengths. And I really felt like this episode, I got to do what I'm good at and also what I really enjoy. And it's an experience I'll take with me forever, because like I've said before, it was terrifying and I wasn't sure I could pull it off. And then doing it was just so fulfilling, and I'm extremely proud of it.
I'm so glad that was the experience, because it's so wonderful to watch. One of the other performances that I wanted to ask you a little bit about was the moment where Harrison's daughter does the sign language performance, because it was such a beautiful moment, and I think really captured what the show is about, which is about communicating without words, and it's a fully nonverbal performance. And I was interested in how that experience changed the way that you thought about moments like that throughout the season. Not necessarily that we go back to those sign language moments, but just the way that as actors especially, you communicate without language all the time, and how that experience helped to inform the way that you thought about it.
So I was very inspired by Sandra Mae Frank, who plays Abigail and who is the lead actor in the fight song, which is performed in American Sign Language with no subtitles, because she is, one, just a really strong, moving actress. And the whole group of actors are from this company called Deaf West, which is a theater group in Los Angeles where they perform their shows in American Sign Language. And it was a beautiful moment for everyone because, like you're saying, I think a lot of our show is about community, kindred experiences that you can't express through language, that must be felt and heard sensorially and not necessarily intellectually. And these are a group of kids who have suffered adversity. They are deaf and hard of hearing, yet they are living their lives to the fullest expression, and they're really incredible artists and great dancers and performers, and so fun to be around. And that was a really special episode for us.
It's so beautiful to watch. I wanted to also ask you a little bit about working with John Clarence Stewart and Skylar Aston, because one of the beautiful things about their performances and their characters are the way that they really draw out different sides of Zoe's personality and the way that you bounce off of each of them very differently. And so I was interested in how you kind of set that up with them and how you really look to their performances to guide where you're going with your own one.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this sort of happens like subconsciously. And I think from watching the show, I've realized that between Zoe and Simon, there is like sexual chemistry. Like you're like, ooh, that's like hot and dangerous. You know, he's engaged to another woman. But there's very palpable like attraction. And then with Zoe and Max, it's like deep love, safety, there for each other, friendship, soul connection or something. And I knew John Clarence Stewart before we shot this show because we made a Netflix series together called What If? And when we were casting ZOEY'S, they were having a hard time finding the character of Simon. And I actually suggested John, and he went into the audition and killed it and made everybody cry. And I was so excited for him and proud of him. And Skylar, and I recommended John because I think he's a great actor and because there's a deep sensitivity in him that I think really serves Simon. And Skylar, as a person, makes me laugh, and we have so much fun together. And so I think that the ways that I connect with these men outside of work definitely informs our relationship on screen.
Yeah. I also really love watching the relationship between Zoe and Joan, played by Lauren Graham, because I feel like the show kind of teed it up at the beginning like, oh, it's another terrible woman boss and she's going to be horrendous and everyone's going to be at loggerheads the whole time. And even though she's not a perfect, it's great because she's a complex, realistic person who's not perfect as a boss or as a friend in every single moment, but then also has redeeming qualities at the same time, much like women in real life. And I was interested in, for you, the importance in getting to play a relationship like that on screen, purely because we don't really see that dynamic very often in the way that women are presented alongside each other.
I give Lauren Graham that credit. There was a lot of talk between her and Austin, and she really pushed the role to be more of a friend of Zoe's rather than a nemesis or like the stereotypical cunty boss. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word. But she was right, I think, and ultimately the weird and humorous relationship between them is such a joy for me to watch and to play, especially because I adore Lauren, and to see her as such a there's a screw loose in Joan, that's for sure, and to see Lauren get to play with that because she's such a great improviser and such an amazing comedian, and we're used to seeing her as like the relatable, complicated mother, and to see her as more of like a businesswoman with a screw loose was just so fun to watch for me. And I think some of my favorite moments of the show are between Joan and Zoe.
Yeah. And you've mentioned previously when talking about the show how, your characters really come home with you a little bit at the end of the night and at the end of filming. And I was just curious to know what the aspects are of Zoe that still sit with you when you leave set at the end of the day or at the end of filming an episode.
I'm changed forever. Yeah. I wish I've read about actors that are like, I go home and I have a cigarette and a coffee and I forgot all about the rape scene. I'm like, I go home and I cry for like 7 days because it like meant so much to me. I mean, maybe I need to work this out in therapy. I really get so invested in the stories that I tell and the characters that I get to play. And I become so connected to the group that we make these shows with, and especially the cast of Zoe's. We are still such good friends and continue to be. But for me and Zoe, I do think a lot about hearing the music and not being so stuck in my play of life. You know, like we all have a play, we all have a script of like what's happened to us in the past and how we expect people to react to our actions and to us, and just to try to be a little bit more flexible and to listen more instead of be so rigid. That has been something that I carry with me still.
That's really wonderful. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk about this. This was genuinely a pleasure and appreciate it.
Thank you.